All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We want to say thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to join us for what is invariably a very important topic to our community as it relates to the 2023-24 budget, and specifically conversations surrounding the R&R, otherwise known as revenue neutral rate. My name is Kellen Adams. I have the privilege and honor of serving as a superintendent here for USD 453. And next to me is the amazing Chief Financial Officer, Beth Maddox. Beth, welcome.
Good afternoon.
This is take number 2 earlier today from 1:30 to 2:30. We offered something very similar to this format. There's going to be a couple changes to what we do here, mainly with regard to one panelist that is not available. And I'll go into that here in just a second. But regardless of that, if you do not or were not able to view or know of individuals that were not able to view either now or at 1:30, do not worry. Mr. Potter, our Director of Public Relations, will be archiving both of these and hosting those on the district's YouTube channel. He's informed me those should be available as early as tomorrow morning. So again, we would encourage you to pass those along to friends, family, patrons, or otherwise that weren't able to join us here. So with regard to our guest panelist that was not available for session number 2, his name is Dustin Avey from Piper Sandler. Piper Sandler is our bond underwriter, and he was on earlier today, and again, just not available for this session due to schedule conflicts. But what Mr. Potter has done is taken that particular clip, which it sounds like is in the neighborhood of 20 minutes in duration, and he is going to separate that file. So that way, if you want just the pieces related to Dustin, you can consume just that component. So our time here tonight will come to an end at 5:30. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. I'll be sharing my screen here for the first portion of this. So we do have the chat feature enabled, and would encourage you that as questions percolate for you to input those. We're going to answer any questions that we're able to here at the end. If there are questions that require additional research or otherwise, we're not going to attempt to answer those tonight, but we are certainly fully committed to answering those. And so our protocol for that is to simply email that question to Mr. Potter, who's going to put his email in the chat here shortly if he hasn't already. Then Mr. Potter will coordinate with our business office and will ensure that those questions are answered. As I shared at 1:30, we're going to probably need in the neighborhood of a 7 to maybe 10-day maximum, but I know that our business office understands how important this is. And so we will turn those answers around as quickly as we're able, insofar that the research and data and so forth are easy to obtain and otherwise turn around. So with that, we're going to jump in first with a short presentation of new information. And really this new information is items that haven't yet been shared at a board meeting or otherwise. But what I would say are, what I'm going to call them, Beth, frequently asked questions, yes. Right? So hopefully you're able to see the screen share up on your screen at this time. So Beth and I are going to go obviously back and forth here. But with that, we're going to jump right into what we're calling the new content, and then we'll go into some other topics as well. So with that, one of the questions that's come up, Beth, is with regard to our student enrollment and the historical there.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, we have 10 fiscal years as well as obviously this year serving as the projected.
Right.
So takeaway from me as I look at that is 10 years ago, the district was just over 3,800, right? And today is now at or around near 3,500. So a net loss of in the neighborhood of 300 students, right? So yes. In round numbers, 10%, right, of our total student population over that 10-year time frame. Column 2 then represents both free or reduced price lunch, which again, that's set by the federal government and takes into account both a household's income as well as family size that is determined annually by the federal government and deals with federal poverty thresholds. And as you can see there, the numbers have been north of 2,000 in some cases, and then the corresponding percentage to the right column. Beth, we talked about this earlier, but I think it deserves highlighting again. The one that jumped off the page to me was the 21-22 school year. So add some context for why you see that there.
So that was of course the year after COVID, and at that time USDA approved free lunch or free breakfast and free lunch for children in schools. So there was no student meal price that the board set and collected.
So 2 fiscal years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
which I think again was a great thing for our families.
Yes.
But as a result, I think our district, as well as really several others across the state, saw a decline in
Yes.
that, which then led to less at-risk funding, right? Which
Yes.
we won't get into today, but suffice it to say, less dollars flowed to the
Right,
district, right?
right.
So,
Parents did not have to fill out the paper free or reduced price application, so that's where those numbers come from.
yep. One thing that I think is important here as we get into this and understanding is that you see those numbers in the right column. Anytime you're exceeding really the 50% threshold, that means that at least 1 in every 2 students, if not more, is coming from a less affluent background.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And typically, not always, but there is research out there that says that those students will have more barriers to overcome in their education. Right. And certainly some challenges that come with that. And so we as a staff fully understand that, and it obviously leads a lot into the work and how we approach the work on a daily basis.
Yes.
The next question or topic, I guess, if you want to call it that, that's been frequent here lately that we certainly want to acknowledge is the comparison to our neighbors to the south. The caveat here, of course, is that all districts in the state, there's a total of 286, make their decisions independently. And so I do not dare try to offer conjecture or interpretation as to what is important in 469.
Right.
But suffice it to say that the decisions that are being made in that district, I believe are an accurate reflection of what's important to that community, their local priorities, and so forth. But as you can see, and as you're about to see here shortly, while the 2 districts may be geographically very close, I would contend that they are certainly different in many regards. So thanks to the teaching and learning team. Big shout out to Ryan Bodensteiner. If you're not familiar with him, Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, he was able to put this together here for us. Just as an FYI, all this information is readily available to the public. I believe most of which was found directly on the KSDE website or otherwise. So what you're going to see here is just purely informational, but again, is all publicly viewable information. So for context, the first row there talks about enrollment. And as you can see, our 2 systems are in the neighborhood of 1,100 students apart. So Leavenworth for years was a 6A high school, and I believe is one of the state's largest 5A high schools. Yes. Lansing, again, is in our conference, but about 1,100 students less. The next one which really stood out to me as I'm learning more about the district was the number of attendance centers, which we're going to talk about here later. But as you will see, a total of 8 buildings in Leavenworth, which again, if you look at the total district is about 17 square miles, or the state's 4th smallest school district geographically, right? But nonetheless, 8 buildings compared with Lansing that has a total of 5, one of which is, you'll see the caveat there for the early childhood program. So again, don't know what, when, or how those decisions were made, but nonetheless, Leavenworth made decisions that said they wanted community elementaries versus Lansing made a decision at some point that said they want 1 elementary. That right there is one primary difference that I see as I look at the comparison between the 2 districts. If we move to the next section, it talks about hosted programs, which this was again new information for me, but certainly I think is important in the greater context of this conversation. You will see that we host 2 programs here in our district for other area schools, other area districts. The first of which is something we're certainly all very proud of and aware of, which is our JROTC program, which boasts a total of 4 staff members, as well as numerous national championships. That there is that hosted at the Leavenworth High School facility. And then the second of which is the Pioneer Career Center, located at, what do we call it? West Middle School, right? Yes. So the old West Middle School, now known as PCC, which is then obviously staffed by a partnership with Kansas City, Kansas Community College. We are not aware of any hosted programs in USD 469. So again, not trying to necessarily say that is a good or bad decision, but nonetheless, these are decisions that were made in 453 that were not necessarily made in 469. Beth, please, by all means, bump in if you want to add any context.
Nope,
okay. But for the
going.
sake of time, we're going to keep it rolling. Okay.
Yep.
The next looks at some student demographics and or achievement related pieces. So the first of which is district attendance. You see there about a 5% difference between Leavenworth and Lansing. So just under 87 and just over 91 for the two districts. The next one, which I think certainly jumps off the page to me, is those that are economically disadvantaged, about a 12% difference there. Beth, confirm for me here, this is just those on free lunch, does not include the reduced. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, so if you're wondering why don't those numbers match the last slide or a couple slides ago, this is really just looking at those in that severe poverty range. Race and ethnicity also has some differences here. You'll see the breakdown there. We are just over half Caucasian or white, a pretty good spread there between African American at 15%, multiracial at 14 and change, and Hispanic just under 12. Lansing finds himself a little more towards the whiter Caucasian with just under 72%, Hispanic population just under 11, multiracial just over 8, and then African American. So again, those are the 4 at least reported categories that we could find within those specific subgroups. Students with disabilities does compare pretty close there, just a 0.2% difference in that regard. But again, the one that really jumped off the page to me here was the next one, chronic absenteeism. So for those of you wondering what that is or how that is defined, that is when a student misses 10% or more of the school year. So again, in round numbers, we have approximately 180 student attendance days. So the way I explain it, Beth, all the time is this is 2 days or more per month, right? So a total of 18 days in the school year or more. And as you can see, right at almost half of our students were considered chronically absent last year. That's a huge challenge for teachers, right?
Yes.
Think about that. You're delivering instruction, you're structuring units. You're really trying to move students along a pathway from August to May, and you've got students that have, in some cases, missed 10% or more of that total instruction. That will have an impact on achievement. So, and then finally, the graduation rates. Won't get into the specifics of this, but just know that in graduation rates in Kansas, those are calculated on cohorts. And so the last 2 years are there for you, 21, 22. It did look like we had a nice little uptick here in Leavenworth, so just under 3% there. There was a change in Lansing, moved down from 92 to 88. So Beth, anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to keep us moving along then.
Yes.
So finally then is a district to county comparison. Beth, I want to make sure I get this right. 5 other districts in Lev County, right?
Yes.
So to our north is the Fort, 207. Then of course us, Lansing, as we alluded to, Baser,
Yes.
right? Then Tonganoxie, and who's the last one? Easton. So 6 total school districts. I believe we're the largest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Easton would be the smallest.
Yes.
Some certainly have a rural environment, much more than say we do here, but nonetheless, this is a comparison across the county. And so the one that really stood out to me here was the first one, the mean family income. And in round numbers, about a $15,000 difference there, right? Yeah. So again, we're talking about a factor that is not necessarily guaranteed, but is typically directly correlated with student success, right? So you're dealing with family income and the resources that typically come with family income, and or the opportunities that are extended to students there. And so that again, I think directly ties to what we saw with economically advantage or disadvantage, data that we saw previously. Those receiving food stamp benefits were about double what the county average is. The disabled population a little higher there, about 6% difference, as you'll see. Civilian veterans, which again, as you all know, we certainly support, but we see a larger percentage here versus the county. Then the bachelor's degree or higher, this is talking about the primary parent or guardian's educational attainment, right? Okay. So now what we're looking at here is educational attainment by the individuals responsible for raising the child. And so again, what research says is typically there is a correlation between mom or dad, parent, guardian, their educational attainment, and what son or daughter may end up having, right? And so there again is not a direct one-to-one, but there is a natural correlation that's research supported that says the educational attainment by the family can and will have an impact on the individuals that we're responsible for, right? So you see that difference there, about 5%. Foreign born, not a real big difference there. And then broadband access, which again, as we know, is becoming more and more important every day as it relates to connecting to the information superhighway. And you'll see a difference there that not necessarily is huge, but nonetheless does put at least 3% of our students at a disadvantage compared with the rest of the county. So Beth, anything you want to add on that regard?
Yeah, those are good statistics.
Okay. So that is all kind of new information. What I thought we'd talk about next is with regard to some of the things you may have seen, but also may be new for you. So I apologize if you have already seen this, but I think it bears repeating as it relates to just this greater conversation on revenue neutral and otherwise. So the first slide I have up here for you is the mill rate history, which again, really looks back at the district over the last 10 fiscal years. And if you have the chance to watch Mr. Avy's 20-minute clip, would certainly encourage you to do that. But one of the key takeaways I had here is that you have, over the course of this 10 fiscal years, reduced the mill rate in round numbers by 16 mills, right?
Yes.
While having a bond and interest mill rate. Okay, so let me pause there and provide some context for the school district here. We assess taxes in 4 total funds. The first fund, of course, is the general fund, which is statutorily bound at 20 mills. The second fund is the local option budget, or sometimes referred to as the supplemental general. The third of which is capital outlay, and then the final is bond and interest. Capital outlay for bricks and mortar projects and other related physical assets. Bond and interest then is our debt service for the various bonds. Our last bond was 2018, is that
Yes,
accurate?
that's
Okay.
correct.
You then had a bond maybe in
2008.
2008. So
10 years.
so
Yeah.
you're carrying a couple different bonds, which again, I think the buildings are amazing. We've done a great job. Kudos to our community, to our Board of Education, to our administration for the amazing support in that regard. But regardless, you aren't able to do a 16 mil decrease without being real strategic. So Beth, talk about what the district did in that time frame that allowed 16 mils to decrease.
We were fortunate, the economy was well, and we were able to refinance the bonds after they were issued. And we were able to capture interest rate savings and pay some bonds off earlier as well. So we saved the district approximately $9 million by doing the refinance process.
So similar to, I've got a mortgage.
Yes.
I take it out at say 6%. Right now, this wouldn't be the case, right?
Right.
But let's just go back a couple of years. I think it was around 2020. Interest rates fell to 3. I would probably be looking at refinancing my mortgage and saving on my principal and interest payment, right?
Yes.
You all did the same thing.
Yes.
And to the tune of $9 million.
Yes.
Certainly a huge savings for the district.
Yes.
Beth, is there anything left to refinance at this time?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so you've called, process is called calling, all the bonds that can be called at this time.
Yes.
Well, again, kudos to you and your staff. $9 million is certainly a large sum of money, so
yes,
that is amazing. I did want to show this because I think it brings in the numbers. So again, you're going to see that general fund, very consistent number. That is, in effect, statutorily bound. So our board, our administration, nobody has any impact on that.
Right.
Then the other operational dollars is that LOB, as we talked about, that has fluctuated, as you can see.
Yes.
And then capital outlay is a mill rate bound, or mill rate capped, I should say, mill rate at 8. And then finally that bond and interest.
Yes.
So anything you want to add on that component?
No, I mean, just the chart there clearly shows where bond and interest, at one point was 19, almost 20 mils, and now it's decreased to 14.
Absolutely. Beth, I think it's important maybe that we pause here and maybe talk about what revenue neutral is.
Okay.
And just at a broader level, the concept behind revenue neutral, right? So let's think through revenue neutral from a district perspective first.
Okay.
What is revenue neutral from the district's perspective?
From the district's perspective, that it is receiving the same amount of property tax dollars in, we'll just say, calendar year 24 as we received in calendar year 23.
All right, so let's just talk round numbers. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
If we had $20 million in tax receipts last year, We
Yes.
could only have 20 million this year to stay revenue neutral.
Correct.
Okay, so if we say went to 21 million, we would be exceeding revenue neutral.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I use that example because that helps me define, it's really based on the dollars, right?
right,
You then can fluctuate some of those mills.
yes,
The net result is really just we're focused on those dollars, right?
yes.
All right, so now, again, for the homeowner, that I assume is watching, either now or later, right? Or that commercial property owner. What does that look like for me as the revenue neutral relates to it, me as a homeowner or a commercial property owner? Does that mean that my tax bill is gonna be the same?
It does not,
Okay, why not?
because your valuation more than likely changed.
Okay, so there is a chance that regardless of you going revenue neutral, my bill may still be more.
Yes,
So the revenue neutral rate is tied to the district's valuation as a whole,
yes,
not me as an individual homeowner or me as a commercial property.
correct,
Okay, very good.
yes.
Do we deal with the assessment value of a home?
We do not.
Okay, so who does that?
The county appraiser. does
County
that.
appraiser does that? Okay,
Yes,
so that we are only responsible for setting the mill rate, is that accurate?
yes,
Okay, very good. I think that's important, because, maybe one of the questions I think that might be percolating for folks is if the district goes revenue neutral, why did my taxes still go up,
right,
right? It's very possible, correct me if I'm wrong here, that a district can go revenue neutral or the city or county, any of the taxing entities. But that the homeowner's value increased beyond that percentage.
That is
Is that an accurate statement?
that is,
Okay.
yes.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you for that, Beth.
Sure.
So we're gonna continue on with some of this conversation as it relates to our facilities. One of the questions that's came up frequently is with regard to the cash balance,
Yes,
specifically in the capital outlay fund. So Fund 16, otherwise known as capital outlay, that is again one of the 4 funds that we assess taxes in.
right,
And really deals with the bricks and mortar of the district in smaller projects.
Mhm.
Typically, when you do the larger projects, as we talked about, you go out for a bond. Nonetheless, this is everything from maintaining roofs to installing new boilers, etc. Right?
right.
I thought that we could bring back our very capable director of facilities for this conversation.
Sounds
So
good.
Beth, I'm gonna get a little closer to you.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Mr. Dedeke, if you would please. So. There's a familiar face, hopefully to many of you. So, Mr. Dedeke, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I thought we could talk a little bit more about the 13 million balance and looking at some of those components, if that works for you guys. So let me go back to the screen share here. And I apologize, I don't have that slide pulled up yet, but we'll get there shortly. All right, so Beth, thank you for the table here. This was great for me in understanding where exactly all that 13 million plus is at. So I thought it'd be beneficial just to go through this line by line,
Okay.
looking at those items, providing additional context for our folks and maybe wondering why is the district sitting on that large of a cash balance. So
Okay.
first one, as you can see, is property self-insurance. So Beth, talk to us about that one.
So that is our self-insurance for our wind and hail deductible that we have on property. So our total building insurance value is 213 million and our deductible is 2%. So simple math, 213 million times 2% is a roughly 4.3 million. And we have, unfortunately, we know that's not locked in and values change. So that's why we're having the 4.5 million for our self-insurance.
So we've got a carrier that said 2% is
Yes.
required.
Yep.
For purposes of that wind and or hail, that is, I'm sure we all know, is very possible here in Kansas. Matt, I talked earlier about, it's a small district geographically, right?
Yes.
Would you agree it's quite possible that if Nettie Hartnett had a storm related damage, that Earl Lawson or David Brewer could also have it within that same storm?
Absolutely.
So we talk about this number being very large. Again, it's 2% of that total value, but from my end, a very small district geographically, say then versus out west, where there may be districts that have multiple hundreds of square miles, buildings in different towns, et cetera, right?
Right?
It is quite possible within our small geographic area that we could have the total loss across all buildings, right?
Yes.
So referred to as first dollar coverage. This is required by our carrier and must be in liquid cash, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. I hope that adds some context because again, that's a big number. I think to me and certainly to other people. And what I didn't understand is, my deductible for my car it's far less than that, or my house, right? But because of the large amount of building assets that we have, that 2% does represent that kind of number, right?
Right.
So.
Right.
Awesome. All right, let's talk next. Next line here is emergency funds, and it's sitting at 2.5 million. I want to be clear, all these numbers, correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, are unencumbered.
Yes,
They're very round numbers intentionally, right?
right,
They do have and create some flexibility for us, so they're not bound to a specific dollar amount, right? But
Right.
nonetheless, 2.5 million, again, that's a big amount. Let's talk about what that is.
so emergency funds are for those things that break down and we need to get a repair quickly, keep the building up and running, so we don't have to close school for repair. And Matt manages those items.
Matt, anything happened here recently or otherwise that would fall into this category? I mean, that sounds like a large amount of money to me, right?
Yes.
So,
It is a large amount of money. When we talk capital spend for commercial properties, the dollars increase from what we're used to seeing at our residents. So recently, we had a boiler at one of our elementary schools that has a cracked heat exchanger. Parts no longer available. It is just old enough to not have replacement parts. So we're working through the process of replacing that. So that could be a $60,000 repair or replacement that otherwise we had not planned in our capital spend. We also just came out of a week of extreme heat, and when we have 60+ rooftop units trying to create a cool environment for our learners, it's important to be able to respond if we needed to replace a piece of equipment or a major part of that equipment. Again, those pieces of equipment are very expensive, 50,000 or more per rooftop unit, depending on the size. So those are just two examples recently that we've combated. The heat, luckily we worked through that, no major issues at this time. But that's what we want to be prepared for, keeping kids in the classroom, teachers comfortable, and education going.
Yep.
so one boiler potentially is how much?
I'm going to say it's probably in the range of about 60,000.
How many boilers do we have across the district?
We
Put
have,
you on the spot.
sure, I think I have 21 boilers.
So 21 boilers in our 8 buildings,
Mhm.
and each one of those is 60,000 today, right?
Roughly, yes.
Fair to say it's probably gonna get more expensive next year than it is this year, right?
Correct.
Correct. Awesome. Well, that helps me understand, because I'll be honest, when I see that number that jumps off the page of me, that's a large sum of money, 2.5 million, right? But then I started thinking about in the context of a home. So let's say you have $100,000 home. This number represents 1%. Correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, and I'm rounding some numbers here, right?
Right,
1% total of total building assets, right?
yes,
So $100,000 homeowner, that'd be the equivalent of having $1,000 if my AC condenser went out, right? That helped put it in perspective for me, because again, 2.5 million really jumps off the page.
Correct.
But now that I think about it, we really are only accounting for 1% of stuff to break down, right?
Correct.
So, okay, very good. Third item here is facilities repair of buildings, 1.8 allocated currently there. I'm gonna keep going back and forth on the screen share. So Beth, talk about what that is and or not.
Sure.
so that refers to our capital outlay plan that we put together, and every year we review for projects that are coming up to be due, and so Matt manages those projects to keep everything up to date. We don't want to let things go.
Correct.
Matt, talk about the process you use for that.
Sure. So our first meeting, we kind of touched on a few things. I'll wrap back around and explain a little bit more in depth. The first piece is safety. We're always looking at safety for the community, for the people in the school buildings. So whether that's a physical repair or something other, that's one of our first goals, is to keep people safe. Then we look for comfort and then repairs. So those two kind of weigh each other out. And a lot of times those repairs also lead to the comfort of the building, whether it's rooftop units or boilers. One of the things I think is important to understand is in the school district, we have over 800,000 square feet. So we used the example earlier of a 2,000 square foot home. That's equivalent to about 400 homes. So we're trying to clean those, manage those, and keep those operational and open, so we don't have any down days, loss of learning. We talked briefly about roofing, which has been an ongoing expense for the past probably 10 years. When we talk about roofs and the cost associated to them, they are very expensive compared to what you would have at home. A house roof, you might have $15,000 in expense. We may have a $300,000 roof. Two different animals. And one of the big takeaways when we talk about spending allocated dollars for capital outlay, when we can plan to renovate a roof or make repairs to a roof that will extend its life prior to its failure. An example being worn, we have spent about $1.1 million on that roof over the past 3 years. I anticipate one more spend, probably in the neighborhood of $500,000. So we'll be a 1.6 investment on that roof that's 24 years old right now. We had an option of letting it run till its failure, but we would probably look at about a $6 million spend at the end of its life. So by being able to forecast and continue to spend small amounts every year, we're able to extend the life of our properties, keep things operational, and in the long run, save some dollars in the tax base.
So you're paying some now to hopefully avoid paying more later.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And also not letting the proverbial snowball build.
Correct.
So instead of did you say 6 million?
I would estimate 5 to 6 million.
You're chipping it off a little bit at a time.
Correct.
500,000 this year, $1 million this year, right?
Yes.
Suffice to say, correct me if I'm wrong, $1 million worth of work today will probably be $1.1 million next year.
I would agree.
Right.
Mhm.
Whether that be through the increased cost of materials or labor or otherwise, right?
Correct.
So the ability for the dollar to stretch is becoming less and less, right?
Correct. And I think also in this example, we're able to prolong the life of a roof in a way that is less disruptive to our school environment as well.
Right.
So there's different methods of doing this, but if we had to do a re-roof, that is going to be a major physical impairment to that building for a duration of time. But ultimately, we just try to keep the buildings operational and in good condition. And then we also have some things that come up that through inspections, equipment's life is obsolete, kind of like the boiler, where we talked about the part not being available any longer. That would be something we would typically make a repair to. Unfortunately, the manufacturer no longer supports that. They've gone a different way. We have energy codes to worry about, changes in refrigeration. These type of things will limit our abilities to maintain equipment and force us to make changes down the road. So having this extra helps provide that stability for the district.
Thank you, Matt. So again, I look at the number, it is very large, right? 1.8. Beth, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a little less than 1% here of our total buildings, right?
Right.
So I think about, I'm a $200,000 home value owner, right? That would be the equivalent of $2,000 in one calendar year for all of my repairs, correct? Whether that be the roof is leaking, I need to call a plumber, I need to replace drywall, the driveway's cracked, you get it, right? Probably not gonna happen in most homes if you're trying to maintain a good facade and good home, right? Matt does capital outlay, ebb and flow, this idea that it is consistent spending, I think, maybe a misnomer for people. So just wanted to talk about how that looks. Correct me if I'm wrong. You may have months that you only do a couple $100,000 in projects. There may be other months that you're exceeding 7 digits. Is that an accurate reflection?
I think that's fair. I think we try to forecast multiple years out, then we forecast the year that we're in, and we start with projects that have the highest priority so we can capture those and make sure that they're funded, scheduled, and on our books. But within that year, something could change and adjust our spend. And so we have those conversations in-house and we make the best decisions to, again, keep kids in seats and the building's operational and safe.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I was just say it's also true that supplies are getting harder to be delivered. Like in the schedule, you try to schedule it, but then it's kind of got to be flexible with the schedule because materials and supplies.
Correct. So a lot of our bigger trades, they're a year out, 6 months out. So it is trying to get on their list early so that we can hit our tight window. And school districts One of the unfortunate pieces is we have about a 2-month window that we can do disruptive work. So we try to work in other options through that time frame, but it is scheduling as early as we can where we can predict it.
Thank you. Beth, I want to talk about line items. It looks like 4, 5, and 6,
Okay.
are what I call kind of the refresh
Yes.
items, right? So facilities replacement, technology replacement, and facilities deferred repair. So talk a little bit about what those are, Beth.
So we'll start with technology. So that is the annual replacement of devices, whether it be Chromebook or laptop, iPad for both students and staff. As you know, I'm probably gonna get this wrong. I think 5th grade through 12th grade is a 1-to-1 ratio with a device. Yep.
We've got a number of devices in the district that we're trying, obviously, to help support instruction,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Just like my house, the laptop gets to, age year 4, 5, 6, whatever, starts running slower, it may not even load one day, right?
Right.
At some point, I have to replace that device.
Yes.
What if we did all devices in 1 year? Is that possible? Could we do that?
It's possible.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
What would be the impact if we did all devices in say 1 year? Would you have to press pause on a lot of the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Something else is
So-
gonna give.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're trying to really eat that elephant little by little, one bite at a time.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, of course, our very capable folks in the technology department have a great schedule in which they've, allocated those dollars. They are understanding end of life, et cetera, right?
Yes.
But the idea is similar to what you're doing on the roofs, honestly, in my opinion, right? Is we're knocking that out little by little instead of letting a big snowball build.
Right.
And then in 1 year, we're having to eat the elephant all at once, right?
Right.
So, okay. Anything else you want to add on any of those items?
The other thing on deferred facilities is just we don't want to keep things too long deferred, so we try to catch up when we can.
Absolutely. All right, let's go back to the document, which again, thank you for putting that together, Beth. So you're gonna be hearing shortly about our next strategic plan, which really will be kicking off here in probably the next 30 days or less. That will hopefully enter into a 4 to 5 year cycle that will guide our work and serve as the beacon and direction for where we take the district next. We have what we believe are 3 components that will come from or be tied to that strategic plan. These are kind of broader buckets at this point. So to be very clear, these are not board approved, they're not encumbered, anything like that. Rather, they are the district continuing to be strategic about long-term needs. And we're going to talk about how we have done that previously. But those 3 buckets, as you'll see, is for district special education, district career and technical education, which I will add in JROTC, program that we're all very familiar with there and certainly want to support as it relates to their growth and their needs. And then the third is our district athletics and or activities. Again, we are a large 5A high school and offer nearly every KSHA, Kansas State High School Activity Association sponsored activity. And so with that comes a responsibility for the facilities and upkeep to maintain them.
Yes.
So Beth, I see some, again, pretty big numbers here,
Right.
right? But I want to talk about really district planning, thinking long-term, thinking about needs, tying it to the strategic plan, right? And Matt, we brought up earlier, thinking about the future, right? I know it's only 2023, but actually there's been some conversation about when could the district actually go for another bond that would not be any cost increase to the district, right? And so you talked, Beth, I'll let you add in here as well. In 2018, our ability to really realize some benefit by having set aside dollars in the capital outlay fund. So Beth, talk about the financial piece. Matt, I want you to talk about what it looked like on the ground. Okay.
So by having a few dollars in the capital outlay fund to add with the bond project, you're able to get some more projects done. I'll let Matt give an example, but typically you're able to get a better price on things, and since contractors are already on site, it's easier to expand the work a little bit.
Correct. So I think one of our better examples was in the 18 bond when we were building Leavenworth Intermediate School out at the Warren campus. And we were able to add, I believe, about $1.5 million from our capital outlay at the time to help replace rooftops that were approaching 16 years of age. R22 refrigeration, that refrigeration was increasing in cost. We were seeing more repairs. It was a good opportunity to update those rooftop units. We did new windows and doors to make the building a little bit more energy efficient, take care of some leaky windows and ensure a good solid envelope. So we were able to add those to that bond work. And as Beth said, a lot of the contractors that are awarded the bid come out of different areas of the state. So when we can have them here on site already, we don't have to worry about paying the additional travel costs later on, and still have that buying power from our construction partners. So that was probably the best example that we were able to knock out a lot of the capital outlay plans that I had kept deferring. In anticipation, we're adding a little bit of our capital dollars to that bond campaign.
So Matt, you're able to see, correct me if I'm wrong, some economies of scale, whether that be with mobilization or labor or decreased costs per unit, per square foot, et cetera.
Correct.
When we've already got, I think it was north of 30 million, right? And now we're tagging into that with additional cash.
Correct.
From capital outlay, right? Correct. Beth, is it a correct statement that by taking dollars from capital outlay, we either were able to do more work or able to minimize or decrease the cost of the bond?
Yes,
Okay. And I don't know, maybe it's a combination
It
of
was.
both, right? But regardless, you're able to do more, right? By having some of that cash already in the bank and not having to amortize it out.
Right.
Awesome. Well, again, I think that speaks volumes to the cash balance that we're seeing, as again, we're thinking to the future. I honestly, I have to commend former board members, former administrators, certainly the folks that are here today, because you were a part of that. It doesn't happen overnight. And so I commend you for the long-term vision in that regard. I've been to several school districts and I will tell you our facilities are second to none. So it doesn't happen by accident, but rather through intentionality. So thank you both for that. Anything else you want to address on capital outlay?
No.
Okay. So Matt, you got anything before we send you on your merry way?
No, sir.
I want to say thank you for the good work you and your team are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. We're going to shift gears here a little bit to the operational side of the district. Let me find that slide. But as we have alluded to for really I'm going to say the last 10 to 15 minutes, capital outlay is a focus of the current mill rate, right?
Yeah.
And Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to go with a revenue neutral budget, your plan, your proposal was to take that from the capital outlay budget, right?
yes,
The mill rate was maxed out at 8 mils. It would be just over 0.6,
Right.
right? So just over half a mil, right?
right,
Could that be done this year?
yes.
Okay. What happens long term if we go revenue neutral? This would be the second year
Yes,
in that case, right? What happens to all this stuff, all the projects, all the needs that Matt's talking about? Do we just press pause on that?
on some things,
Okay,
yes.
so you're gonna press pause on some, right?
Yep.
What happens next year if we want to go revenue neutral? Where are we going for that?
Then we would have to go to the operational fund, the LOB fund.
Okay, LOB fund, operations, are people paid out of that?
Yes, because
Okay,
school district 80% of expenditures are in personnel, so yes,
so are we talking potential cuts to personnel if we start decreasing the LOB?
yes,
So now we're hitting a lot closer to the classroom at that point.
yes,
Right.
yes,
That's where a concern of mine would be. Not to overshadow our needs of bricks and mortar and supporting our facilities.
Right.
But now we're talking about the potential either loss of jobs or non-renewal positions or otherwise, right?
Right.
And certainly impacts to the classroom with whether that be higher pupil teacher ratios,
right,
less aides, less support. I have no idea where we would take it from, but it
Yeah.
would be less people working with kids. Is that a fair statement?
yes,
Okay. I think that's good context to know as it relates to kind of this compounding effect that revenue neutral can have. So
yes,
I want to go to the operational side of the dollars. And we've mentioned and talked about Sorry, I'm finding the slide here before I pull it up. We have talked about some of the components related to our operational dollars. And just the impacts that inflation has had.
Yes.
I just realized I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry, folks. Let's try that again. How about now? All right. So I want to talk just a little bit, Beth, if you wouldn't mind, about the impacts that we have had as it relates to the operational dollars.
Okay.
And what inflation has done. So thank you for your preparation here. But this really added some important context for me. Certainly don't have to go line by line, but there's a couple items I wanted to draw out here, right?
Okay.
We work with frequently the CPI of the Midwest.
Yes.
And it's on a rolling average, right?
Right.
I think the latest numbers were in the 7 to 8 range.
Yes.
Obviously depends on where you live and certainly where your products are being purchased from, but there's a couple that honestly popped off the page for me. And I don't want to pick on anybody or anything here. That is not the purpose here.
Right.
But talk a little bit about line item 3, property insurance, increase of $77,000.
Yes. So that was our property insurance renewal that we received with Travelers Insurance Company as our district insurance carrier. Due to a number of property claims in the region, I would believe that's what the renewal rate came in at.
Okay, so is that a number we get to set or negotiate?
It is not.
All right, so that premium, just like me as a homeowner, car owner, right? That was given to us directly by the carrier.
Yep.
Right? And not something that we have any control over, right?
Yep.
Again, in tandem with that 2% first dollar coverage that we're carrying.
Yes.
A couple others I just wanted to clarify here for the viewer. I'm looking at electricity, natural gas, water. I only get my bill once a month. I assume we do as well, right?
Correct. Yes.
So Beth, are those projections or do you know those?
Those are
Okay,
projections.
good.
And just like at home, it's based on usage as well.
Okay.
So
You're projecting, and I think safely, a 10% increase, right?
yes.
We're not thinking there's gonna be an actual usage increase necessarily, hopefully not, right?
Right.
But rather just the cost per kilowatt or cost per
Right.
unit right there, okay,
The one, fluctuation being natural gas depending on the winter.
right? So motor fuel probably is in the same category, again, that's just
Yep.
kind of a hedge, if you will, right?
Right.
The other one that jumped off the page before I go back to the top was health insurance.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what happened there.
So we had a high number of health insurance claims in the district. So the cost for the group health insurance premium is increasing by 40%. Again, it's not negotiable. It's what the carrier provided to us. The district pays approximately 85% of the premium for employees. So the employees pay 15%.
So we've got a cost sharing program.
Yes.
And so as a result, while maintaining with that current cost share, very close to that same cost share percentage, right?
Right.
The employer cost increased substantially,
Yes.
as well as
Employee.
increase with the employee, right?
Yes.
But thankfully, we were able to carry the majority of that, as I realized that would have certainly had a detrimental impact to a number of our people. right?
Yes. Yes.
This goes to recruitment and retention, in my opinion, right?
I agree.
Our ability to recruit and retain a highly qualified staff would probably have decreased if you would have passed that bill along to us,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Very good. I can't go on without at least addressing the line item number 1. Okay.
Mhm.
What are you doing? Are you hiring a bunch of new people? Why am I seeing a huge increase of 2.2 million? That's a large increase there, Beth. I'm gonna need some context to that one.
So that is a budget to plan to fill all positions. Unfortunately, last school year, we had a number of positions that went unfilled. But we can't not plan to have the position. We still have 3,500 kids.
So you've got teacher vacancies
Yes.
that go unfilled,
Yes.
but you still are planning to, insofar that we can find somebody that is licensed and willing.
Right.
We're gonna fill that position,
Yes.
right? Beth, the number I typically use is $70,000 per teacher FTE.
Okay.
Are you okay with me breaking that down a little
Yes.
bit? All right, very good. So 70,000, again, knowing full well that some teachers make more than others, we are bound to what's called a salary schedule in our professional negotiated agreement.
Right.
But that salary schedule, if you look at kind of the middle, if you want to call it that, just for purposes of averaging, Gets you to about 60,000 on the gross income for the teacher.
Right,
We then assume that they are going to take the health insurance benefit that is offered by the district.
yes,
There then is, of course, the matching FICA and other payroll taxes associated with that. So all in all, the district's cost,
Mhm.
not necessarily the dollars that flow to the employee, but the district cost every time we hire a teacher is $70,000.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So then in round numbers, if you have 30 positions that go unfilled, that's $2.1 million.
Right.
Right? It adds up pretty fast.
it does.
Another conversation for another day related to the recruitment and retention, but suffice it to say, maintaining a competitive salary schedule and maintaining a competitive benefits package
Right.
is critical in light of the recruitment and retention of a qualified staff, right?
Right.
Beth, before I move on, is there anything else you want to address on that slide?
These are all projections.
Good. With the exception of the insurance, which you talked about.
Right,
Yep.
right.
So, and I do appreciate that very much. That is how budgeting is done.
Right.
In a district our size and otherwise, so. Okay, I wanted to go through just a couple more pieces. Jake, I'm just gonna check in with you real fast. Any questions yet? No? Okay, so I'm seeing we got about 9 minutes left. I'm certain people are thinking about their plans for dinner, and I don't want to get in the way of that. So,
Me neither.
all right. So a couple more things I thought were maybe relevant and certainly have come up in conversation. Jake, if there is a question that comes up, please by all means interrupt me. But we prepared this, which I thought was extremely beneficial for homeowners. And I realize not everybody that is a taxpayer is a homeowner. Again, I would encourage you to look at Dustin's slideshow, but in our district, I think it was north of 70%. Is that what he referenced? 70% of our taxable valuation is by our classification, residential classification.
Yes.
So we certainly do have some commercial property owners. We're very thankful for those businesses. Because of our small, very small footprint. I'm not aware of any ag land. If there is, it's probably very minimal,
Right.
Very small amount of utilities,
Mhm.
right? And then obviously we've got some exempt property, et cetera. So we thought it was important for the homeowner, being that they are carrying the majority of the assessed valuation, to understand this impact. And so thank you for your office for preparing this.
Yep.
This talks about the impact and kind of breaks it down in, it looks like $50,000 increments for the homeowner.
Mhm.
So again, Beth, I know we talked about it, but I think it's important to keep in mind. This only assumes the same valuation of the property.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
That is
Okay.
accurate, yes.
So if I have done a bunch of improvements, or if the county assessor and their folks have somehow, for whatever reason, increased my property value, this may very well not apply. Is that accurate?
That is
Okay.
correct.
So this only makes the assumption that the property value remains the same.
Yep.
Okay, Beth, anything you want to add on that? These are monthly values, excuse me, sorry. These are monthly values, correct me if I'm wrong. And-
Yeah, far column is monthly.
Okay.
The next flow is annual.
Okay, and they are dealing with the impact of going revenue neutral as opposed to not, right? So,
Yes.
very good. All right, Mr. Potter, checking in one more time. Nothing? All right. Well, I know we've got 5 minutes left, so Beth, I thought we could just share and kind of close out with the remaining timeline,
Okay.
if you want to call it that, of the major milestones that relate to this process, and just where we're headed from here.
Okay, so the budget's published in the paper on August 24th. There has to be a 10-day window between publishing the budget and the hearing, which lined up with our September 11th board meeting. So the first thing will be at 6 o'clock on the 11th here at the board office would be the revenue neutral hearing. The board would open the hearing and hear comments, have a discussion, and approve the revenue neutral, exceeding revenue neutral, potentially. And then they adjourn. It is done by a roll call vote for the revenue neutral hearing.
So on the night of the 11th, which will be not next Monday, but a week from next Monday, we've got a total of 2 hearings.
Right.
So people, when they walk in, can find Mr. Potter and can sign up for that hearing, right?
Yes.
There's no need to call or register in advance, right? And they will have the opportunity to speak at either one of those hearings, but they'll need to designate which one, right?
Right.
So 2 hearings, 5 minutes apart, it looks like on our time frame, and 2 potential pieces of board action,
Right.
right? So while we have published in the paper, we have not taken any final action.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, so that,
What is in the paper, correct me if I'm wrong, is the maximum that the district can settle
yes,
insofar that we don't publish again, right? Okay.
yes,
And then, of course, we've got some final timelines after that, but really the last milestone that's important in this process is Monday the 11th.
yes, is-
Okay.
yeah, the revenue neutral hearing and then the budget hearing and approving the budget.
Very good. Mr. Potter, I'm gonna check back in one more time. Nothing? Okay, well, we might even be done early. So, again, I just wanna wrap this up. Beth, again, I wanna say thank you to you and your team. You guys have done an amazing job with answering questions that have come in, preparing various reports, presentations and otherwise. And just, in my opinion, staying very transparent with any and all components related to this. So thank you for your work on that.
Glad to do it. You're welcome.
Again, if you're watching this recorded, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in and being invested in this very important topic for our district. We did this at 1:30 today. Hopefully we'll follow at a very similar time frame, but nonetheless, I'm sure something deviated between what we said then and what we did now. Probably the primary difference was the piece with Mr. Avey from Piper Sandler, and so I would encourage you to listen to that if you have time. But I will close with this. We are committed to continuing to share information, answer your questions and otherwise. And so if there's something we did not address tonight, my simple request is this: reach out to Mr. Potter or Mrs. Maddox. Let us know what questions are percolating for you, and we can make sure that you have the answers and feel informed in that regard ahead of September the 11th. So Beth, any parting shots?
No, sir.
All right. Again, thank you for taking the time to tune in this evening. Thank you so much for your support of the district. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Take care.